I mean, I've, since as long as I can remember, I've been into art. I won't say photography, I won't say video, I've been into art. So, like, I can remember, like, even being a kid, like, I would do voice acting of Jim Carrey. Like, my mom has, like, these VHSs of, like, me, like, impersonating the Grinch, and then I got into drawing, and then I wanted to be a comic book artist, and almost every avenue of art. I used to write poetry. I kind of explored it. The only thing I never got into was music, to be honest. And it wasn't until maybe high school, where a friend of mine introduced me to photography, and that's really where my background starts, is in photo. And I was fortunate that in high school at the same time, my high school partnered with a television, like, network.
Yeah.
And they actually, like, donated cameras to our school, like video cameras. My high school was big into basketball, so, and, like, they were very well known, so the network would come and record the games, and so, like, then they had students doing all that stuff. I didn't take part in any of that, funny enough, but I was in this thing called art club. And then my senior year, I took what we call dimensional art, and so that's when I started getting into video. And we made this ridiculous thing called, so, you know, Iron Man. We made this thing called Cardboard Man, and literally built an entire suit out of cardboard.
Nice.
And so, and then I kind of just fell from there. I kind of just fell in love with, like, making, like, funny little skits and things like that through video. But then I kind of just took this hiatus come college, and I just dove into photo. I was like, oh, I really want to go into photo. And so I went into college with a camera, but my major was in ex-phys, because they didn't have, like, photography. I was actually supposed to go to a well-known college over here in Syracuse for film, but I didn't get into their, like, financial aid program, and so, like, I had to choose a different college. And it kind of ended up finding out that, like, you don't touch a camera till, like, senior year. So I was like, oh, well, I dodged a bullet. So like, fast forward, I would do photography here and there. I would still dabble in video, like, again, making small stuff, little things. And then it wasn't until my wedding is when, like, our video was awesome. It was a really good friend of mine who I went to high school with, and it just kind of felt like an episode of The Office, but, like, it just felt like, oh man, we were so glad, like, we had it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then what we were disappointed in was our wedding photographer, where the video felt very us. It was authentic to who we were. Like, me and my wife, we were like, oh my god, this is great. Like, it gave that feeling of, like, I wish you were there, like, you should have been there type of deal. Like, if you weren't, you missed out. But when it came to our wedding photos, they were pretty pictures, and that kind of bummed us. You know, over time we've come to appreciate them, sure, but they're still like, oh damn, we wish they had that us factor, right? A lot of it was very posed and all that stuff. So I kind of was like, well, and like, to our photographer, it almost like he didn't care about us. Like, I know the one thing that I say it's my villain origin story, because so, you know, everything was on site, like, venue, ceremony, first look, like, all of it, like, within 100 feet of each other. And my wife's sister is running 5 minutes late. 5 minutes. You know, and she's like, oh, can you just wait 5 minutes? Like, you know, maid of honor's going to be here. Photographer's like, no, I got to go set up for first look. Of course, I didn't know this until miserable. Like, later on. I didn't know this till way later. And so my wife had 0 photos with her sister. And so I was like, oh no, like, I need to get into this. And it kind of seemed like, from my experience, these studios, that's how they all ran.
Mm.
And I was like, oh man, no, like I want to get into this and give couples a completely different experience. I want them to have them through and through from beginning to end, you know. And like, so I started wedding photography in 2020.
Mhm.
And then I realized slowly it kind of just chewed at me.
Mm.
Like this I'm a big lover of film. Like any movie.
Mm.
Ask me about it. Like I can probably talk to you about it. Except like classic movies. But like but I just had this fascination. Like I always thought I would grow up directing movies.
Mm.
And yeah, it just kept clawing at me, and I started to realize like more and more I wanted, the photos were good. I was getting better, but it wasn't telling the story I wanted.
Mm.
It wasn't enough. I was like, okay, that's cool, but I'm like, man, this would be really cool if it was in video.
Yeah.
And so like that's when I was like, okay, let's start doing video. And so like once I started doing that, then kind of I had more fun. And then it just kind of snowballed into this hybrid shooter.
Mm.
And the person that kind of really inspired that was Philip White, and his whole class. And I was just like, oh, like this is doable. I can do this.
Yeah.
So I shot like a couple hybrid weddings, and I was like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah,
we've got to
no.
pick. We've got to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Especially to like the standard that I would want it. And so like eventually it just came down to like, okay, I will still do both, but it will be one or the other, and I'm going to push video first. You can book me for video first. If you really want photo, then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where it all dived into.
Amazing. I love that. You know, you're probably the first person I've met who kind of got into like wedding photo video and stuff from seeing their own wedding like videos and photos first and going and what I find really interesting is that like you got your wedding video, loved it, and then got the photos like and you were like, well, there's a problem to fix with the photos. I'm gonna do photos. And just jump straight into that.
And I was just so used to it too. Like everyone was so used to me walking around with a camera, like on college campus. Like my first job was I got hired by the yearbook committee, like freshman year of college, and so I was like, oh, like photo's cool. Like I can do this, and like I got more and more into it, and I still do photo. But asked me like, hey, let's go shoot stuff on video. I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. Like, you know.
And do you find each discipline like informs the other, like the fact that you're still doing both, like they each sort of, you learn a bit on a photo job that you're like, oh yeah, I'll make sure I incorporate that on video, and vice versa?
So I think what happened was, because I was so used to photo, I transferred all of that into video because it didn't feel like people were doing what I was doing in photo. And so, but what I did do was take all the lighting concepts from video and apply that to photo. And so I always say this, and it's like, I think people need to learn both disciplines. I think videographers should learn photography, and photographers should learn video. Now, if we're talking about cinema, that's an entirely different thing, of course, right? But understanding both mediums is really important, right? Because I think there's so much that you can learn from both, right? Whether it be learning to look at light like a photographer and learning to see motion like a videographer, I think can play very well into both mediums.
I would love to hear your, I guess, perspective or definition on the difference between videography and cinema, and why you think it's different.
I think so. From videography, right? The entire concept of videography or videographer, the definition by definition is shooting or capturing what's happening in front of you, right, as it's happening. Cinematography on the other hand, is the combination of using light and photography and motion, but you're actually in control of that scene or whatever it is. And so I think the term cinematic gets thrown around like
it
popcorn.
does a lot.
It gets thrown around so much. Like, unless you're Zack Snyder, like, slow motion is that cinema? Like, I don't think so.
This is the thing. I think honestly the lines are just too blurred these days.
Yeah, now.
Because there's things that end up on the movie screen that can't hold a candle to what gets put up on YouTube for free. Yeah, in terms of storytelling, quality, even cinematography these days and stuff. Like, I think the line between video and cinema and videographer and cinematographer and all these sorts of terms and boxes and definitions are a little less defined these days, I feel. Which I kind of like.
Yeah.
I like that things aren't necessarily binary between like these two worlds, and that you do play between them, and like the fact that you can get like Oscar-winning films shot on iPhone that are gritty and raw and like very video. That's nothing new either. You look at the likes of like the Blair Witch Project and all these kind of found footage things and stuff. Like, you sort of lean heavily on the kind of videography aesthetic. But I kind of like that. I kind of like when lines are blurred. But going back to movies, and especially if there's anything else, like where do you kind of draw your inspiration? Like, you said that you love movies and stuff. Is like, are there particular directors, or is there any other? Are you still drawing inspiration from, say, art and drawing and things like that, or where do you kind of pull inspiration from for your work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think more and more as I lean into video, I'm really paying attention differently to how movies are done. Of course I look at like what our industry does, but I don't necessarily use that as like, oh my god, I want to shoot.
No, exactly, because
right?
you just get watered down versions.
But a lot of my inspiration comes from, I would say, people like, in terms of like my editing style lately has been inspired from Nolan. Kind of the concept of how he edits two timelines going in polar opposite directions, right? So a recent wedding film that I delivered, I kind of did that. So while the getting ready is happening, the build up to the first look is also happening while seeing like the ceremony and stuff. And so kind of letting those two timelines eventually just converge and let that build up. And so there's that. In terms of cinematographers, David Fincher. Oh man, it's like now you ask me and I can't.
It's funny because it's like
man, I could name these like on a regular Friday, but like
I know
I'm being interviewed and I'm like,
as soon as I'm shoving a microphone in your face, it's like no, but I love that, and because I love looking at like traditional cinema, Hollywood cinema, and because it is quite inspiring, but then I often find it quite daunting to know, like, okay, how do I take that inspiration and package it up into something that I can actually apply to my craft in a way that I don't, I'm not Fincher on set, like telling them to redo the first like look like 80 times and with perfect lighting and everything, so I can match the camera move and get it exactly how I want it, the way that Fincher does. So, but I like how you're saying, like, you taking inspiration from Nolan with those multiple timelines, because like that's a very, very tangible way of going. Like, like that's something that they do that we can apply to our work.
Yeah, I think the other thing is just looking and watching a film and understanding where's the camera. relative to the light. Like a lot of people don't understand shooting shadow side or trying keeping slightly off center while shooting. Even if you're shooting in light, like if your person is lit, like you can still shoot off center, so that way you're kind of aiming still a little bit towards that shadow side, so you have that depth. Like I was just watching The Greatest Showman the other night, and just kind of seeing like, okay, where's the camera? Like where are the lights coming from? How are they shooting into the lights? Or are they, or how are things backlit? How are they moving the camera? When is the camera moving? I think paying attention to those things is really critical. And then applying it to your own films. Like I used to move a lot, like a ridiculous amount. And now I try to, like, if my couple's not moving, I'm not moving. If my couple's sway, I'm going to sway. So kind of like just that mimicking the psychology,
the energy of what's going on. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, I try to keep it like a big thing for me is also, I think the challenge I challenge myself with is how can I bring cinematography into basically a documentary run and gun situation. Yeah. While keeping it almost as authentic as I can. So essentially, like, how can I get this with one shot? Like I am like, that's one thing. That's like I guess it's like a what's the term?
Like a goal of yours?
Not a goal, but a guilty pleasure is like one takes.
Yeah.
Or oneers. Like I love
yeah.
oneers.
Ah, man, I had a mad fetish with those back in the day because I came from, like, my first foray into video was filming my old dance crew, and I used to love making these elaborate little, like, one take sort of choreographed dance things. We would, like, move the camera for like 3 minutes straight through this whole environment, and I was obsessed with the overly complicated masturbatory one take shots. They just are like just completely over the top.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
but very fun to make.
Incorporate that. But if you want to incorporate that into a wedding, right? I think a really fun one is just like a slightly low angle on like a 24, 28, and just following your couple through a crowd. Like just follow them. I think that's a really fun like one take, because then you're getting like, I think somebody really pointed it out really well, because I always had a hard time like kind of pinpointing like, okay, when someone's like, oh, how would you describe your films? And I'm like, I always say, I'm like, well, it should feel like a guest with a camera was there, and like somebody just hit the nail on the head and was like, yeah, your films feel really immersive. And I was like, that's it. And so like I think going with something like that gives you just a whole different feeling, right? Because you're moving with the couple kind of through as they're saying hi and all this stuff, and you're kind of just like taking in for a second, like, oh, these are all their friends and family, or like the people that are most important as they make their way to like the middle of the dance floor or whatever. I think it's also just a really cool feeling to recreate for and deliver to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, especially if at that end, in the kind of mingling environments where it's just like people all around, and you feel like you're kind of like weaving through like with the couple. It does kind of bring you right in. Absolutely. Do you feel like when you're looking at cinema and movies and things like that you're like consciously having to pay attention and make notes, or does like kind of absorbing that come quite natural to you?
I would say absorbing it comes quite natural. Like I'll sit there and I'm like, oh man, what a great transition. Or I'll just say that, and my wife will be like, she'll say like, now she's learned to kind of like pick up on that stuff too. Or like she likes to joke with me and says, oh, I'll be like, oh wow, that transition was great, and she's like, yeah, thank you. She like,
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go back to watching this story now. Yeah, no, I find that fascinating because I always feel like whenever I've tried to like, okay, like sit down and pay attention to these things, I feel like I have to do that. I feel like I must absorb things on a more subconscious level because like if I'm wanting to like take like sit down and go, oh, I want to like try and learn something from, when am I watching Casablanca or something, I need to really pay attention, otherwise I'm like, this story's great. And then just kind of everything else washes over. Yeah.
I mean, I think that usually happens with me most times on a film that I'm really into. Or sometimes, you know, like during the boring bits of a film, I start thinking like that. I'm like, I start looking at like, oh, this room is lit very interestingly. Like, I wonder, like, oh, where's the lighting coming from? Or how are they mimicking the lights? Even though next thing you know, they show the wide shot and you're like, that lighting didn't match. Yeah. And you're like, huh. My brain starts trying to like figure that stuff out.
It's the sort of shit that I'm just like not consciously seeing. It doesn't like penetrate the conscious part of my brain when I'm watching things like that often. Interesting. I find that shit fascinating. I guess to sort of stay on, well, what I think is staying on the world of like being inspired by cinema and movies and stuff. Is that the reason you chose the red as your tool of choice? Because it's not the most common choice for a wedding videographer, is shooting on a red. Tell me why you still enjoyed hurting yourself.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad? Okay. Cause
it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
I've heard painful things.
Well, yeah. So the thing is, I think a lot of, I'm trying to think of a proper way to put this, but I would say my skill point, not even, that sounds dumb. The way I operate, I'll say, is, you know, from when I started in photo, I didn't have a ton of money.
Yeah.
And so, like, I used a Rebel T2i and a Canon 51.8 until the wheels fell off.
Combo. The classic combo.
I used that until the wheels fell off. And it wasn't until, like, I couldn't push the camera anymore that I was like, okay, I need a new camera. And it was because I was doing... No. I just recently... I got the red this year. This year. But prior to that, I was actually... and I still do. I shoot on Fuji.
Yeah.
Again, that's just from the photo point. But I think a big thing is, like, people get so obsessed with rigging up their camera. And there's a point to it, sure. But especially when people start thinking of a red, they think that, like, they've got to make it as big and bulky as possible. When realistically, like, my red setup is I run on 4 batteries, the 4 big giant Canon batteries, the hand grip, and a Sigma 24-70.
Yeah. And did I see that you use your phone? Did I see that you use your phone as the monitor?
Yep. I use my phone as a monitor because the entire camera can be operated from the app. So that's cool. Instead of dealing with, like, the menu, I've got it set up in the app, like, all the controls that I need. So, like, I want to switch from 6K to 4K. Cool. So I want to go from full frame. Essentially, because I use the speed booster, if I want to go from full frame to Super 35, I can.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, it doubles essentially whatever focal length I'm using.
Yeah.
And so the real reason I got the red was, one, I've always wanted one.
Yeah.
let's just get that out the way. Right? It's every filmmaker's dream. Yeah. Secondly, it came from the point where, as a creative, I would say I'm pretty lazy, in like a good way, in the sense of, like, I hate having limitations on what I can push. And, like, if I have to overthink something, I get taken out of the creative process, and I'm someone who really gets stuck in my head about the dumbest stuff. Um, and so, Michael? No, okay.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. Oh, my AirPods is connected. That's what happened. Okay. Yeah. So in the sense of, so the reason I got the red was, one, I just felt like for weddings it makes sense. R3D, like, why would you not want raw capability? Photographers have the raw capability. Why can't video? Why should photo be able to change white balance on a whim, and video can't?
I guess because, like, well, the answer that jumps to the front of my head is the cost of media. Because I guess the thing with red raw is that you can compress it. Oh, hang on, I think your AirPods keep disconnecting.
Yeah, they keep disconnecting. I'm about to do this without my AirPods.
Yeah. We might need to do with headphones. If they do keep dropping out, we may have jump to some other headphones just because the echo is going to get in the way. Yeah. I'm just going to make a note timing-wise so I can edit this bit out. Cut here. Anyway, red raw. I guess the thing with red raw is that you can compress it. Because for me, I could shoot raw if I wanted to, but Canon RAW is like unwieldy, and I'm already wrangling enough data on the day as it is, and so it's like diminishing returns for me. The quality I would get versus the like huge outset and cost on media for me just like yet hasn't made sense. And I'm not fully familiar with the kind of how hungry the red is when shooting raw. So like, what's like a wedding day for you, data wise?
Realistically, if I'm shooting my standard like 9-10 hour day, I'm probably walking away from that wedding in total with about anywhere between 750 and 800 gigs.
Okay.
Per wedding.
Yeah. See, because if I was to shoot a whole wedding in RAW on my kit, it would probably push more like two terabytes. Because I'm already at like 500-600 gig just shooting 4K. Just shooting. Just shooting.
What are you shooting at?
R5C mostly, and then I've got the three other R7s and stuff. So like the R7s are particularly pretty chill. Pretty media efficient, but the R5C is relatively hungry, like 4K 50. It chomps through the cards pretty quick. I will say that the only time I don't use so basically I use my red all day. Won't use any other cameras until ceremony. Like my Fuji's stay in my bag until ceremony. And then when dance floor, like when the lights fully go out for dance floor, so after like first dances and stuff like that, then I'll put the red away and I'll just run the Fuji, because the Fuji just has a higher native base ISO, and just runs better. But we're gonna test that this weekend. Shooting a pretty big wedding. You just to bring more lights. do what the cinematographers do and just bring more fucking lights.
That's the other thing is like lately I've just been walking around with one or two lights, and they're the Stella Pros. So one of them is like the reflex that acts like a flash. That one I use more as a hair light, and then my key light is usually like this thing called. It's called the CLX10, and so that gets me. Like I've learned. My challenge is like, how can I just give a kiss of light? Because I think the thing that annoys me with a lot of wedding videos, especially when I'm watching like speeches, is like just full blast. Like these, I'm like that I can. I know there's a light on them. Versus like I want it to just look like there's a little bit of light. Yeah. Like it still looks like the ambient in the room. And so for me, like that's a big thing as well. It's just like, okay, I only really just need one. Like if the room's lit well enough. The wedding I'm doing this weekend I think should be fine. I might get away with not having to need any lights because it's a very big venue in New York City, and so like apparently they have their own lighting team for the venue. I'm like, cool.
Sweet.
I'm bringing my lights anyway, but
Yeah.
if I don't need them, great.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, also, yeah, but to kind of, I didn't really answer, or maybe I did answer your question, but when
No,
I'm
you did.
shooting when I'm shooting with the red, the other thing is like, so it has tiers, right? It has like HQ, MQ, LQ, and then recently they released ELQ. So that's really made for web. Like if you're, it's still R3D, it's still red raw. So you still have that 16-bit image, or 16-bit color space. But it's like not that much higher than ProRes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Sweet.
I have my Fuji's on ProRes LT, and then the red on ELQ all day. And so if I'm shooting in 6K, I get like about 3 hours, and then if I flip over to 4K, I get about 4 hours.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm
Totally
just like,
doable.
I'm
Yeah.
like, this is not that bad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's
the
fine.
raw flexibility, like it's not necessarily for the image quality. I've had like, I released a video and I put it up on YouTube, and somebody was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can't tell the quality difference," and I'm like, "Good, you shouldn't."
Yeah. Yeah. It's
shouldn't.
more
Like,
just that
that's-
flexibility in the color is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I want the flexibility, color. I want. I mean, don't get me wrong. The image that comes off of that sensor is gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just looks like it's sharp where it needs to be sharp. It's soft where it needs to be soft.
Yeah.
And just the flexibility in color, and also global shutter. So when I'm running around with couples, that looks great.
You get any wobbles?
Yeah, no wobbles.
Yeah. Nice. No, cool. I guess I found it interesting because my assumption with the red was that it wasn't really built for us. Like,
No.
I see someone like Justin Porter Media who's just
Yeah, he just bought one, yeah.
switched to reds, and I'm like, oh yeah, like for someone like that, absolutely, like he's got a whole fucking crew, and he's bringing like dozens of lights, and like he's using it like the way, you know, sort of high scale Netflix doco crews use the cameras.
Yeah.
And sort of, so I've always assumed this single operator run and gun, it just didn't suit that style of camera. But it's cool to see someone proving that wrong. So good on you,
Yep.
Joe.
Thanks.
Leading the charge.
Trying. Gotta differentiate
Amazing.
somehow, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny because it's not at every wedding, but I would say at least the past 3 weddings, someone has noticed.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, you're using a red."
Oh, this
I'm like,
guy.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, that's super cool, and they get super pumped,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
it's a fun conversation piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the approach I have a lot of the time is like, again, is I want to make it feel like I'm a guest with a camera.
Yeah. And this is
that's
thing,
the way I put it.
And that the appearance, for like the people who do notice, there is a non-zero tangible outcome of that level of quality, and so in the same way that like the car you rock up to in the wedding says something about you and your business and everything, and like if you go to a black tie wedding in a tux, that says something about you and your brand's quality and all these kinds of things. So like, as much as as creatives we like to say gear doesn't matter, there is this kind of aesthetic kind of show that doesn't have zero outcome on the way clients
Sure.
perceive you and your business and your work. So
Yeah.
there's always that too.
Right. I think the whole, like, I mean, that's a whole thing, right? The whole gear doesn't matter, gear doesn't matter. I think it absolutely does, right? It absolutely does, because I think it doesn't. So I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is that it doesn't matter when you're first starting out, because you're learning. So it doesn't matter what you use. You can use your phone.
Yeah.
Like, get to learn the basics, get to learn composition, get to learn lighting, get to learn shutter speed and ISO and aperture and all that stuff. When it does matter is when you're on a professional gig, right? I mean, a corporate company isn't going to hire me and I show up with a little Sony or my Fuji.
Yeah,
Like if I don't
I mean,
build it out, like it's just gonna be like,
yeah.
like why did we?
It's just,
how much did we pay you?
I know. Yeah, it's just multiple different things, and then there's the other end of the scale too. You know, someone like Sav, a girl on her phone. It's like the almost that for me is the amazing like kind of expectation flip of that paradigm of being like damn straight I'm rocking up with a phone and
Absolutely.
and people have hired me because of my work and look what I can do with this. So there's there's so many different ways you can actually like flip those expectations too. The
100%.
danger is when you just like generically sort of mull around in the middle and and yeah, for me, like learning from the last few years is like sort of learning to, I guess, go through a bunch of changes and unlearning what I had learned from like the first part of my career and stuff. But as someone who just sort of started in 2020, what have you, I guess, learned through this process of like starting with photo and then picking up video and going through this process of like starting a wedding film business? What's some of the things you've sort of learnt along the way?
Great question. I would say one of the biggest things I've learned is my voice, and what do I want that to come across as with my brand, and really diving into brand language and understanding how do I attract the clients that I want to work with, and the ones who want to work with me. And it's been a very interesting journey. Because you start off with just thinking like, oh, if my work's good, they'll come, right? Build it and they'll come.
False.
Yeah, super false. You've gotta talk the talk. But also a big part is personal connections. But that's something I've always been. That's just who I am, me personally. Like for the longest time, I did not have a website until like a year and a half ago, maybe. Yeah.
I know plenty of people who get by with no or a very minimal website. It's not a necessity.
But more and more as I keep going into this, I realize like, oh, actually, you know what? I want my website to be a home base for how people connect with me, in a sense, in terms of just kind of meet and greet, but also as a resource. So kind of focusing on creating, I mean, the one thing that no videographer does is blog. That is the one thing we can all learn from photographers.
Yeah.
And so if you learn to blog as a videographer, there's no reason that you can't get booked probably before the photographer. Which I know is oftentimes like, that's not something we see a lot. But the more you become a resource, the more problems you solve up front, it's like, it's almost like, why not? Right.
Yeah.
I was just having this conversation in a small group that I'm actually in with Sav. And we were talking about like what 2024 bookings are looking like. And everyone's like, oh, the bookings are low. Like, why is no one booking? And I had also seen it on a Facebook group, and I had to explain, I'm like, we're coming off inflation here in the States. Like, we're in inflation actually here in the States, and no longer is it good enough to just look pretty. Like, the money's there. People, the couples are willing to spend. We've just got to kind of jump in front and be able to solve those problems ahead of time. Like, you have to build that value. And then when you're on that call with them, like a dear friend of mine and mentor essentially was saying, he's like, you've the resources have to stop at the call. Like, once they get off that call, there's I've got to move on. Right. And it's not necessarily like gatekeeping, but it's like, listen, if you walk into the next interview with the same things that I just told you and they go, oh, we don't do that. If you walk in with my voice into the next videographer's interview, it just becomes a no-brainer. It's like, why didn't we book Joe?
Yeah.
All right, like, why didn't we book Ben? Ben said he built a timeline and all this stuff. Like, he answered all our questions.
Yeah.
Like, why are we not booking him?
Mm.
And so it's like people are, they're not necessarily afraid to spend money, but they're willing to spend money on the things that matter, and they're really, really taking the time to understand, like, what are we investing in?
Mm. Yeah, like, I think we so often forget that we've been to, dozens or hundreds of weddings, and we know all these things, and that often our couples like don't know what they don't know, and don't know why video is important outside of a few of their friends telling them they should hire a videographer. So yeah, education is a huge part of the process, and but then figuring out the way to do that in the way that's like got your voice and is adding value and all this sort of stuff is tricky to figure out.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, the number one thing for me has always been just like, how can I help? Like, that has been me all my life. Like, that's why I went into a degree of XPhys when I did, is because I enjoyed helping people. I didn't realize, like, I can do the same thing in art. Right? Because I didn't know what I didn't know. But as I've grown, I'm like, these are people's memories. This is documentation that they're never going to get back. You're never going to hear grandma's voice again once she passes. You can, if you have video, right? But and when I'm talking to my clients, I kind of, and not to sound morbid, but I tell them the truth. I'm like, guys, listen. And it's not to sell them on video, but it's when I'm asking them and trying to get to know them, and I really want to know what's important to them. I talk about it. I'm like, listen, what does it look like in 20 years when you're watching your wedding film, knowing that grandma or a parent or someone close is no longer with you? And they just sit there and they actually get quiet and they just go, I never thought of it that way. And I'm like, yeah. Because no one wants to think about that. But I'm like, it's gonna happen. It's actually funny, because, not funny, but I had a bride. She booked me for that reason. She debated on not having video. And then her aunt passed away. And they watched like the whole wedding, like on VHS. And it was like 3 hours long, and she was like, no, Joe, we need you. Yeah. And do you offer, I get it now. Like, she's like, do you offer like a document, like a doc edit or anything like that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And probably one of my favorite couples I've shot this year, honestly. Like, they were great. But yeah, because they
understood, what they were getting, what they were doing, and why they were doing it, outside of just being told, oh, here's another vendor you should like add to your list of things to do. Right. Yeah. I
mean, I tell, and the other thing is too, is like, I have to remind, like, I obviously selling photos is so much easier sometimes. But the other thing I remind couples of is, I'm like, listen, your wedding day ends. The cake's gone, the music stops, the dress gets put away, the flowers die. All you get back is photo and video. That is the only thing you have left after your wedding. And then they kind of sit back and they're like, yeah, we should probably have video.
Love that. You're a very smooth salesman, Joe. Very smooth.
Yeah, I just keep it real.
Just keep it real. Do you find like talking with couples and like communicating these sorts of things the easy part for you, or is that a skill you've had to sort of work on developing over the years? What part of the process do you find the easiest? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's funny when you sent me that, I was like, damn, what is the easiest part? I think overall, just communicating with couples comes fairly natural to me. Whether it be the sales process or on the wedding day. A good friend of mine who I usually second shoot for, because when he does photo, he's like, dude, I basically only hire you because he's like, I love the way like you can just like calm people down. Like, it's just like, he's like, I don't know what it is that you do. And I'm just like, dude, I just tell them what it is. Like, and I just smile. But I would say the easiest part for me is always talking with couples. And again, it kind of goes back to that whole thing that happened with me in my wedding, was like that us factor, that authenticity, that I'm your friend, I'm the guide here. I'm not here to necessarily sell you anything. And that's literally how I start off my entire talk. I'm like, hey, is now a good time to chat? Great. Listen, first things first, I want you to know this is not a sales call. And they literally, and they go, I'm like, yeah, like, man, we're just going to have a conversation. And I was like, yeah, we'll talk about pricing and all that stuff. And I was like, but by the end of the call, we'll find out if I'm a good fit for you and if you're a good fit for me. And they go, oh, great, awesome. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy kind of being the person that, I guess, the calming voice, I guess, would be the best way to put that. But yeah, when I talk to couples, it comes very natural. I'm always curious. I get very curious with people, and I think it's because, again, this kind of came from my mentor when we were developing, like, you know, why do you photograph, or why do you capture the things that you do in the way that you do? Like, what's your reason why? And eventually it came down to like this introspective process, which I really enjoyed. And I realized that the work I create is a reflection of me, in the sense of it's how I see the world because of the things I've been through. And so I'm taking that and applying it to my couples. So, you know, when people are like, they want to create magic for couples, right? That's a term we all use as videographers, right? But it's because we see magic in our own lives, right? And so, like, a big thing for me is, once I'm in front of a couple and I'm talking with them, I really want to understand who they are. I slowly get into like deep personal questions, not in an intrusive way, just hey, if you want to, and I tell them, I'm like, listen, I'll go as deep into this conversation with you as you want. Like, if you want to go super deep, I'll go deep with you. If you want to reel back, fine, cool, we'll just move on. And a lot of times the ones who connect with me actually tell me like insane life stories, but and some really deep stuff, and it's because like I want them, I allow people to just be themselves when you're talking with me. Like, there's no judgment, there's no nothing. Like, just be who you are, I'll be who I am, and like, let's make sure that you're getting the best option possible for yourself, even if it ends up not being me.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. And I always love hearing from people who find that sort of stuff comes so natural, because for me that's been a part of the process that's been a bit more of a slow burn, shall we say. I've slowly had to learn and develop those skills and find my voice in terms of like really, I guess, in a roundabout way, communicating with couples, because I started by being able to like see that without talking to them. I could like see a person and like understand them, and make them something, and then be like, wow, this really feels like us and it's amazing. But
Yeah.
I always did that kind of like non-verbally and just kind of read people. And I've slowly had to develop these skills of actually like talking to the human beings. Yeah, so it's just, I find it fascinating, like just seeing just the different skills people bring to the table and how that translates.
Yeah, I mean, I had like 5 years of practice prior to weddings, because, like I said, so I had a degree in exercise phys, and so like naturally, right out of college, I had a job as a personal trainer that specialized in injuries. So talking to people was my job, like literally walking around the gym, and it was like, I consider myself an introvert. Everyone else that knows me will disagree. But I'm like, I'm an extrovert when I need to be. Put me in a room of people, I'll butterfly around, sure. I'll be a social butterfly and get to know people. But a lot of times, I'm sitting back and I'm observing. I'm quiet at first. And then, like, forget after a wedding, like, don't talk to me. I don't want to talk to anybody or anything for, like, 2 days. But
social battery is completely empty.
Completely gone. But in terms of so selling personal training at first was very difficult. Like, even approaching somebody was like, it's like almost like approaching a girl, right? You're just like like your shoes untied. You know. But having learned how to talk to people, understanding sales psychology and psychology overall, most of the sales tactics or tricks and stuff never worked for me. It was more so just like, hey, listen, I want to help you. You need this. Let's talk about that. Why is this important to you? Why do you think it's important to you? And kind of just let them kind of answer it for themselves. What I had to learn eventually was how to ask for the sale. That was probably the hardest part. It was like, okay, great. Okay, now you tell me that you want to hear my packages. Or you tell me, okay, let's see the deal. Versus me going, all right, so next steps are. You know,
that's cool. No, that's cool. Like hearing that process of learning those skills, because it can be quite awkward, and especially that getting it over the line, right? That like you like the chit chat back and forth's all good, but then you have to unlearn the knee jerk reaction to be like, okay, cool. Well, you just like let me know if you want to like book me, and it's like just like just you get in touch if you want. No.
Yeah, so a recent, it's weird, but like this recent mindset I've kind of had is, just you don't need permission. In the sense of like, you want to go create something, you don't need permission to go create it, right? And it's the same thing with closing a deal. It's just kind of just being more confident, which has been, I would say, difficult. A lot of people, I would say, think I'm super confident, and sometimes I am, but a lot of times when I'm like, I want to execute on something for myself, I definitely like get analysis paralysis and all that stuff, and I can easily get in my head and imposter syndrome, all that stuff. But I definitely would say, like, I saw it on Instagram today. It was just like, you're one fuck it away from like achieving whatever you want. And it's kind of true though, right? Because if you just get out of your way, that's the biggest thing, is like, as a creative, just get out of your way, turn your mind off, fuck it, you're gonna go do it, right? So it's the same thing, like if a client is in front of you and you know you're pitching them, conversation is great, you want to do their wedding, they want you. Why are you waiting? Just fuck it. Just like, all right, listen, next steps are this. The worst thing they could say is no. No,
and that's and you're absolutely right. And this is the thing, is that like that attitude, it doesn't necessarily lead to like all the immediately best answers right off the bat. It leads to potentially getting the no and going, aha, that's the lesson. I'll learn and change from that. It's when you're paralyzed, being like, I don't know the answers, don't want to make the wrong one, so I'm not going to do anything. It's when you go, fuck it, we'll do the thing, and then it's either a yes, cool, or we learn from it, and that's how you progress, right? And that's how we all develop. So I think it's the same thing, like kind of sometimes needs to happen with shooting.
when you're on the wedding day. I mean, don't get me wrong, you need to get the shots that everyone expects that are kind of standard, but at the same time, it should be 100% for you and 100% for them, right? Like it should be 100% all the time. So like when you're creating, like there's been times I've sacrificed the walking down the aisle shot for a shot I thought was cooler. Like I was like, oh, this would look way more interesting. Yeah. Sent over the film, didn't get asked a question about it. And it's just like, sometimes you just gotta lean into it. Like you're there as a creative, right? Like they are entrusting you at the end of the day. The client is entrusting you to tell a story. How it looks is up to you, right? There's certain things that are just gonna naturally happen. There's certain shots that are gonna look, we all know what they look like, right? We know what getting ready looks like. We know what buttoning the dress looks like. But does it have to be, are you willing to sacrifice some of the shots for shots they didn't even know they needed? Such as, let's say, what if, let's take speeches, I guess. Are you willing to sacrifice a shot of the speaker for someone who's crying or a mom who's crying? But
this is that you might not necessarily have to sacrifice, and this is actually something I that came up in my conversation with Artem, is basically being really clear on like what your safeties are, and he just like kind of hands off that work because he's like got an assistant or a couple of assistants. I think two. He's got like 2 seconds, and he's like, "These are all my like safety shots. These are what I need. I'm gonna focus on fly around and experimenting and doing all the weird shit because I know that my bases are covered. So that if I am out here experimenting and doing the weird shit, the times that it doesn't really work, it's okay. We jump to the safety." And it's all fine because the safety's going to work. So, and actually that kind of approach I'd like learned from that and was like, cool, because I love like a really tight angle on the speaker, like looking directly over their shoulder, seeing seeing the like during speeches, seeing the person talking, but then like over the couple's shoulder. But that only really works when the person's speaking directly to the couple. So you can't really like set your tripod up for the speaker shot like for the whole. That can't be like your main kind of like hero tripod shot. But I sort of clocked what Artem said and was like, okay, cool. I'm going to keep my tripod there, but rather than just thinking, oh yeah, my shot of the speaker is sorted, I'm then going to go, what is going? For anyone listening at home. Some weird sort of fireworks effect happened when I put my thumbs up. For some reason, I've got some weird effect set on my recording software. So that's interesting. Anyway, back to our regular scheduled programming. I made sure that when the speaker is saying the heartfelt thing to the couple, I'm going to get in there and get my shot of the over the shoulder, the shot that I want. That's like my bang, powerful, more impactful shot, because I feel like if it doesn't work, if something doesn't happen or don't quite nail it, I know I can always jump to my safety. Like having those options lets you play and lets you experiment and lets you fail safely, because you don't want to experiment throw the baby out with the bathwater in this kind of environment, because it could all go horribly wrong.
I just think there should be more experimentation.
Absolutely.
You feel free to play. Don't go overboard where you're playing the entire time. But pick and choose. Like, okay, let's try something different. And I think, and a lot of photographers do this. But the key to that is just communicating that to the couple, right? Like, hey, I'm just going to try something. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. You won't see it. And they'll be like, okay, cool. Like it's just building that trust to be like, okay, we're trusting you as the creative. And
understanding that you do have more wiggle room than you think. Like,
Mhm.
it's okay if you try a shot and you miss it, and it doesn't quite work out. It's fine. It doesn't end up in the cut, and the film is still going to be a great film.
Yep.
So that's always part of it too.
As long as you got the I do and the kiss, you're good.
Yeah, yeah. But then even then, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
Cool. Actually, yeah, because I'm pretty sure I've done wedding films where I haven't shown the kiss, and it's fine.
There's more. Okay, so
Yeah.
I know you're interviewing me, but
Yeah.
what don't you include in films anymore that you used to?
So way less makeup shot. I really try to not show makeup and shit getting put on, because every couple I get on the call with, like, one of the first things they say is, we don't want makeup shot. Like, you don't, because they're saying it being like, you don't have to rock up early because we don't care about getting shots of the makeup. I'm like, cool. The important part is that second half. I'm still rocking up early because I want the anticipation of the morning leading up to the events. But I'm not going to film the makeup going on. I'm going to film you guys chatting with your people and getting all excited and popping bubbles and all that lead up. So yeah, I don't include generically like it is the morning of the wedding, therefore we are putting on makeup because that is what happened. No, like, because that's just boring storytelling. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened.
Yeah.
Boring. You want this happened, therefore this happened, but this happened, therefore this happened. So that's what I've sort of tried to incorporate more, is just less of the like, oh, well, this happened on the wedding day, so we've got to include a shot of it. So, yeah. And it depends on wedding to wedding.
And now you just defined a wedding videographer.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool. So going back to me being the interviewer, amazing. To round us off, Joe, I would love to just sort of go a bit, so allow a chance for you to kind of look forward and just really hear from you. Like, what are you kind of excited about for the next year, couple of years, even just like season ahead? Like, what's getting you excited about the next thing for you to kind of explore creatively or with your business even? What are you kind of looking forward to?
That's a great question. What am I looking forward to? Other than finishing up my current, other than finishing my damn edits. No, actually, I look forward to honestly, like, more and more. I'm beginning to, especially like this past year and going into next year, I'm meeting more and more couples who literally speak my language. Like, I almost don't even have to open my mouth. Like, they're literally saying, like, my brand language just from my post and just like things I would normally say. They're already saying it, and that feels really great. So I'm really excited for the couples that I get to serve next year.
So like reaping what you sowed, like all that, like sort of getting all the payoff for all that kind of work and brand clarity you kind of put out into the world and seeing that come back. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. I'm
just overall really excited to continue diving into film, and actually just kind of my next thing currently is just expanding outside of the wedding, in the sense of like, I would love to do a multi-day wedding. That'd be cool. But it's more so me and my photographer friend that I was talking about. His name is Alex Medvec. And
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex. Me and him are working on like creating like these story sessions, kind of like what's his name, Chris from Good Coast Studios. Yeah. So kind of doing that, and we're kind of both just like testing the waters and kind of picking couples that we feel would suit or benefit from it really well, and kind of seeing how that goes. And we've been testing and seeing like, okay, well, all right, do we need more than 2 hours? Yeah, okay. We need activities, and like we're kind of just building on. And then we're like, okay, but what do we really want this to be, and what do we want it to be for them? What do we want it to look like? And that's been really cool because I've gotten to do some on my own as well, and I'm like, okay, this was cool. like recently I just did one where it was a couple's 1 year wedding anniversary. I didn't shoot their wedding. I've known her for a while, and she was like, at first she wanted me to follow her all around New York City, like as a date night for their wedding anniversary. And I was like, listen, that sounds great, but it'll look redundant after like the first hour. And she was like, okay. But I was like, but she was telling me like all the things that she had planned for her husband, and she was like, well, he's been really like excited to have like a real Christmas tree. This is going to be our first real Christmas in our we're going to have our first real Christmas tree in our house that we just bought, and it's our 1 year wedding anniversary. I'm like, that's the story. I'm like, let's do that. Met up at their house, they decorated their tree, they ate top layer of their cake, they danced, and then we just kind of just like hung out. I let them hang out on their sofa, and like the really cool part was I usually like start asking my couples questions, and I'm just like rolling just in case anything good comes up. But it ended up turning out that they both created a jar of 100 things that they love about each other. And I was like, do you still have them? And they were like, yeah, we haven't opened them. And I was like,
here we go.
Get them. I was like, here we go.
Yeah.
And so like I just have video footage of them opening them and reading each other. So like he's reading what she wrote to him, and so like to me that was really great. And so like I kind of just want to continue experimenting with that and really changing the dynamic of what video looks like outside of just weddings. I want it to be just like photo has the opportunity to do a full life cycle. I want video to do the same thing. You know, like whether it's, hey, let's create a story session around your maternity, you know, your first baby, graduation, all that fun stuff, and kind of like just mold over the years like what that all looks like, because I think more and more people are starting to realize like they want memories, and they're starting to see just how powerful like it looks when they have video and it's just not from their phone, right? And you're having someone come and do it. And I just think that's really special for couples and just people in general. So I'm really excited to be diving into that along with weddings and starting to grow into travel destination stuff. So I'm actually would love to go out there to Australia. You know, I actually have a friend of mine who's over there. I've met him during when the photo group that I'm in. He's a photographer, but he also started offering video too. His name is James Cunningham, something like that. House of Love. House of Love Films, House of Love Photos, something like that. So yeah, he's been like asking me to come out there, and I'm like, yeah, I would love to, but also you guys have insects that belong in Jurassic Park, so
yeah. Well, thankfully I don't, because I'm in New Zealand. But
you're in the safe spot.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in the safe spot with birds that don't fly and nothing that will kill you. Just lots of sheep.
I would love to go to New Zealand too. That's on my bucket
come
list.
here. We have less spiders and no snakes. So come to New Zealand.
That's true. That's right. Yeah. You guys don't have any snakes.
That's I know. Really it's cool. Great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, nothing that's just showing up in your
everything. See, New Zealand is better than Australia. There we are. We settled it.
But yeah, I've been going. This year I went to Colorado three times, and so excited to kind of see where that leads as well. Me and my wife love to travel, so not that I'm trying to get her to be an editor or like assist me. It's a slow burn, but we're getting there.
Get her on the payroll.
Yeah, it's she's there for more support for sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the fact that I love to travel, I want to be able to travel to other places too, and just tell these stories. So
cool, nice, exciting, man. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to just see the progression and just get those different kinds of just it's like this similar sort of skills, but just warping them into different areas and different types of stories, because it'll all feed back into like weddings and vice versa. And so yeah, that's cool. Excited for you, man. Excited for you to explore some stuff, because some of that beyond the wedding day stuff is definitely becoming more and more popular. More and more people are starting to explore it, and so really doing that work to figure out, okay, like it's like holistically, I think it's cool, but trying to figure out, okay, what are we actually like doing, and what story are we telling, is cool to try and figure out.
Yeah, and I also think like just kind of speaking on that again is like from a couple's perspective, at least here in the US, like divorce is so high, right? And like when I think about these story sessions, I'm like, not that they necessarily save a marriage, but if they do, great. But more so from this perspective of just like, I want couples to be reminded of what it was like when you were first dating. Just to have fun together. Like, you don't have to worry about it, right? Like, you don't have to worry about recording anything. Just you'll have somebody else who does it, and it's something that like you guys can look back on every year or every 6 months or whatever. You know, whether it's as simple as decorating a Christmas tree, right? Because that might turn into, okay, we have our first baby, and now we're decorating the tree with the baby. Yeah, great. Or it could be something like, hey, this is our favorite dish to make together and play games. Cool. Like we recently did a couple in Colorado. It was their engagement session, but I was doing video anyway, and they were playing the most intense game of Uno I've ever seen in my life. But that's them. Uno. Yeah, it was hardcore Uno, but like that was a key part to them. Yeah. And so just like those little micro moments to me mean a lot, because I try to have them with my wife. And so that kind of goes back to that whole thing I was talking about before, which is like you create the things that you do off of the experiences in your life because you want to give them to other people. And so like I have these moments in my life. I think more people should have them as well, because they're just beneficial all around. And so like it's like the more I create that stuff in my life, the more I want to just give to other people as well.
Nice. Beautiful. Beautifully said. Nice. Well, I think that's a lovely place
to cap it, right?
Yeah, it's a nice way to end us off. I like that. Beautiful. Hey, well, thank you so much, Joe, for sharing your story and coming on the show and giving your time. It was awesome to hear your story and hear your process and hear your perspective on the joy that is wedding film that we all do. So, man, it was great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was a really good time. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, if anyone wants to dive more into Joe's work, I'll have links to all of his stuff down below. Make sure you follow him on Instagram and all that stuff. Other than that, that's going to do us. And we will see you guys all next time.